Welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan. Before getting into today's review though, I just want to let you guys know I've made a Discord for the channel and it'll be linked in the description. I originally wanted to wait until we hit 500 subs and just post a Discord link in the the community tab, but there's so much going on in the books now that I feel like I need to talk about what's going on with people that are reading at the same time as me and like my theories and stuff. I just really want to talk with more people about it as I'm going through, and yeah, that's pretty much it. You already know how it goes by this point in the series. It's going to be a spoiler-filled review. I thought this book was fantastic. It's definitely my second favourite so far, just under The Shadow Rising. This book definitely made up for The Fires of Heaven for me, which you guys know I was not really crazy about. I enjoyed the first third of this book so much. I thought it was going to be another 5-star read, just like The Shadow Rising. But unfortunately, there were two things that kind of kept this from being a 5-star read for me. The first was pacing. This book was just way too slow in the second half for me, besides the stuff with like the Demise Wells. I didn't mind the slow pacing at the start of the series because the Emmons Fielders and the readers alike were getting to know this new world, but by this point it feels like the amount of time spent on certain things is just kind of overdrawn out, and like it's not as if we aren't still learning about the world, but still stuff just feels really drawn out in this. And if you're a fan of the channel, you already know the second reason why this missed out on the 5 stars for me. Egwene. Any book that has more focus on Egwene, like this and The Dragon Reborn, are just immediately made lesser books for it in my eyes. I'm sorry, that's just my own bias, I know, but it's just how it is. Like, I was ecstatic because I thought she was just going to be comatose for the whole book, but then around like page 350 she wakes up and my day was ruined. And actually make it 3 reasons why this missed out on 5 stars, because there was something else I just really didn't care for in this book, and that is the amount of time spent on the romances. A whole book that focuses more on the romantic relationships, all of the romantic relationships, in a series that has terrible romances is just a recipe for disaster, guys. I'm sorry if you disagree with me, but the way I see it is the romances in the Wheel of Time are bad, and that's just a fact of life, the way the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. However, personally, I don't count the romances as a con of the series overall, because the way I see it is that every character of main importance is just a reincarnation of somebody who's tied to the wheel. And when you have all these characters who have only talked to each other for a couple of sentences fall in love like that, it's just everybody being drawn back to who they are tied to, like Gade Alkane and Brigitte. If I'm wrong about that, well then it's just bad romances with no excuse. There's also the whole like ta'veren pull affecting relationships. You have that pulling people towards their fates. Personally, I just don't really care about romance and fantasy at all, so normally when it's bad, I just don't care, but the amount of time spent on it in this was just ridiculous even for me. It just felt really out of place and undermined a lot of scenes for me, and the way it's included just kind of felt really jarring and like ruined the flow of the story for me at times. Perrin fans, holy shit, Perrin fans are just down atrocious right now. He's not in book 5 at all, and then in book 6 he's only in the prologue and a few chapters towards the end. And when he is present, it's just all focusing on his marriage with Fael. Like, seriously. Like, yes, he was great in the final battle at Demise Wells, but I could not care less about Perrin wondering why he managed to upset Fael for like 40 pages out of, like, how many does he have in this? 70, 80? So let's get into the plot of the book, but before even summarizing the prologue, I just have to say, what the fuck? So the creator has been here the whole time in the background, really? When Demon Dread went to Sheol Ghul, and he talked to the Dark One's speech was in all caps. When this happened at the end of The Eye of the World, I just thought this was Luz Therin talking to Rand when he was using the One Power for the first time. But I guess it was actually the creator. This is actually pretty interesting for me because if that's the case, then it kind of makes something else connect in my head. I can't remember if I mentioned this in my Dragon Reborn review. I don't think I thought it was worth mentioning at the time. But Egwene had a dream vision in that book where she saw Rand on this black and white stones board with these like big boulders instead of stones trying to crush him. And at the time I thought the white side was Lanfear and the black side was Alan Morin, but I guess now that it was actually the creator and the Dark One, the more obvious connection for this is just you have the white side representing light, the black side representing the shadow. But in this book, the Forsaken were talking a lot about the Dark One making moves with people like a board game. I think it was Demon Dread and Shemiraj mainly. Shemiraj was talking about a different game like Techeran or however you pronounce that. The really interesting thing about this though is that in that dream vision, Egwene said that both sides meant harm for Rand, not just the black side. So I guess the creator isn't really the good guy in the grand scheme of things, which is actually something I predicted in my Dragon Reborn review as well. Not for the same reason though, but still. Alright, let's talk about what actually happened during the prologue. This was definitely my favorite prologue so far. 80 pages for a prologue is insane though. How can 8% of your book be prologue? This is the longest book in the series, so I'm going to try and keep the summaries as brief as possible. So we start off with Demon Dread at Shai Al Ghul receiving his orders from the Dark One, and we meet Shaidar Haran, who is this leveled up Fade who is seemingly even above the Forsaken. I'm not sure if that makes him a Dreadlord or something new we haven't been introduced to yet. I don't think Dreadlord actually, because I think Dreadlords are just channelers who are on the side of the shadow. But anyways, we also find out about how Fade's blades are made in the Forge, and we learn about Nay Bliss, who is the Forsaken chosen by the Dark One to stand above and lead the rest during the final battle. I think this is going to be Mazrim Taim. I don't think there's any doubt really that Taim is a Dark Friend. I think it's obvious as hell from the reader's perspective. He's just really suspicious. Rand even said himself at the start of the book, don't trust anybody that learns too quickly. And then again towards the end, Rand said that Taim learns really quickly after just one demonstration. And we see how Taim reacts to Rand trying to establish himself as being above Taim. He clearly hates that, and he doesn't wear the Ashaman badges on his collar. I'm going to skip the bits of the prologue for everyone besides the Forsaken, because I feel like that's all kind of irrelevant for the sake of the review. Besides some stuff, we're basically just meeting up with everyone again after the hiatus. So we find out that Galena and Katarine are both Dark friends. Savannah has some random box that she's meant to use on Rand that she got from some random dude. Have no idea what that box does, but I think the guy that gave it to her is Osangar, carrying out his orders from the Dark One. Morgase's and Pedron Niall's parts of the prologue, I don't think there's anything to really mention from there. Pater showed up again. He's the Dark Friend that Rand punched in the face in the Eye of the World when they got to a random village, I think before the Four Kings, I want to say. And we finally get to meet Messana and Shemiraj when they meet with Demon Dread to receive their own message from the Dark One to let the Lord of Chaos rule. And finally, we have our meeting with Osangar and Arengar. So my prediction was right. The Forsaken can be reborn by the Dark One. So the way I see it is, Mirren and the Lanmoran are most definitely 100% showing up again at other parts of the series. So I think Osangar is Agenor and Arengar is Balthamel. Osangar said that he was asleep during the long sleep that followed the Dark One being sealed, so that rules out the Lanmoran. And he said he has a younger face but not a young one, and Agenor was looking really old during the Eye of the World when he showed up. So I think Osangar is Agenor. And then as far as Lanmoran maybe being Arengar, I just don't see him being reborn as a woman, if I'm being honest. Another reason I think Osangar is Agenor is that when Herod Fell died, he was killed by a Golem, and Grendel said that it was Agenor who made those. There's no proof to show that it was Agenor or Osangar who actually killed Herod Fell, but the fact that a Golem was used is indicating to me that Agenor is back. And another reason I think Arengar is Balthamel is that during the Eye of the World, when Min first looked at Mat's aura, she saw a laughing face. Balthamel at the end of that book showed up wearing a leather laughing face carapace, so I think that's what the laughing face that Min saw in his aura is representing. And who did Matt have a dance with in this book? Arengar. So I think she is Balthamel. So moving on to the plot of the main book now, we start off with Rand at the Royal Palace in Caemlyn, and he's practicing his 1 versus 5 fighting, and we get to see how things are going with Davram Bashir and the Andoran nobles before he's interrupted by the arrival of Mazrim Taim. I already said what I think about Taim. I like him as a character so far, and I'm excited to see where things go with him moving forward. He seems to be this pretty efficiency focused, no nonsense kind of guy without much of an inclination towards mercy. He kind of reminds me of the White Aja in a way, in how he kind of looks at what needs to be done from a purely logical perspective. And we also get to see at the start how Rand is using his teachings from Moiraine in dealing with the Andoran nobles, which was pretty nice. This book felt to me like the opposite of the Fires of Heaven, where you had the Fires of Heaven be a lot more character driven. The Lord of Chaos was a lot more plot driven. So it's surprising to me that this is even my second favorite book in the series so far, because I am a character reader. The characters do still shine though. As far as Rand's character arc progression in this goes, I'm not really too sure what to say for it, really. The main focus of it is his developing struggle with Luz Terran's consciousness, or his soul rather, that's tied to the wheel. I love this, I really did. As soon as Luz Terran's thoughts kept popping up, or started to pop up during the Fires of Heaven, I wanted that to lead to Rand and him working together. Like, I know I make a lot of anime references on the channel, sorry about that, but kind of like Naruto and Kurama working together. So watching that actually happen towards the end of the book was really exciting for me, and I really enjoyed it. In my Fires of Heaven review, I talked about how I think the voices that have been popping up in people's heads throughout the book with kind of negative thoughts has been the Dark One. But in hindsight, that was pretty silly of me. If I just took a bit longer to think that through. I could have pieced together sooner that those voices are just the voices of whoever the people are reincarnations of, like Egwene and Nynaeve, especially in this book. You see that voice help them out with advice a lot. I think it's a pretty safe bet at this point that the madness that people talk about is just the voices of whoever people are the reincarnation of. So it's pretty interesting because Taim mentioned one of the rumors being at the start of the book that Aes Sedai are starting to go mad like male channelers. So that's pretty interesting. I'm not really too sure what to think about that. I would be interested in seeing maybe if all those Aes Sedai going mad are actually Black Aja. So we gradually see Lews Therin kind of acclimate to being inside Rand's body, and as that progresses, we see more and more how Rand extracts information from Lews Therin, and how Lews Therin is becoming more and more aware of Rand's presence, and all of this continues until during the end at the Demise Wells, they finally make an agreement to work together with one another, which was fucking awesome. The whole battle at the Demise Wells was amazing, but I'll talk about that later on. We also get to see how Rand deals with other struggles associated with being the Dragon Reborn. In this book, he's dealing a lot more with having to think of people as resources, and we see how he needs to think more logistically and logically about people rather than compassionately, and we see how the pressure of being threatened by all these enemies on all fronts is kind of influencing this change in him. Like, he has the Teyrin nobles, the Carianan nobles, the Andoran nobles, and the Shadow Aiel. All of these are just causing more and more stress to mount, and that's not even mentioning the two emissaries from the Aes Sedai, the Forsaken, the Sea Folk he can't even spare time for, and the rebellion in Hadon Myrk. There's so much going on for Rand that he's basically forced to start viewing people in this way, but like always, there's a balance to this side of Rand, and we have these moments like when he met Bodwin and the rest of the Two Rivers folk while they were in Caemlyn, and when he's dropping the Ogier off in the Two Rivers, we see just how much he really cares for his roots still, but he's practically forced to turn his back on them due to what he is. We also see these moments where Rand shows that he's not too far gone yet, like how he remembers all the names of the maidens that have died for him, and we see the toll these deaths have on him. Then during the ending at the Demise Wells, we see that yes, he is willing to use people, but he's not just going to sacrifice those that can still be saved, just like how he refused to leave Shadar Logoth without confirmation on Laia. Of course, another aspect of Rand's arc in this is his relationship with the Aes Sedai. I think that was probably my favourite part of the book. This is an anti-Aes Sedai channel, and I hate Egwene with a passion, so watching Rand slowly get to the point where he is like, okay, it's either kneel or be knelt with the Aes Sedai, gave me utter satisfaction. And I don't want to sidetrack myself here and go off on a tangent, but that line, you will either kneel before the Lord Dragon or be knelt, what chef's kisses all around, fucking amazing. And Ashman kill, oh, Jordan, don't do that to me, bro. Alanna bonding Rand, that was wild. I thought it was going to be Elaine on some bullshit, but Alanna being the one to do it kind of caught me off guard. But I was kind of glad it happened because Rand was getting a bit too arrogant for my likings, but we get to see how this, along with what happened with both the emissaries towards the end of the book, all kind of led to Rand basically using Moiraine's warning not to trust Aes Sedai as a mantra to keep himself from reaching the breaking point while being tortured. When you think about what Alanna actually did, like what bonding actually entails, what she did was actually pretty fucked up. Personally, if I was Rand and I just finished that battle at the Demise Wells and I was free and I saw Alanna show up the way she did, she would most definitely be some floating motes of balefire dust on sight. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to what happens with Rand and the Aes Sedai going forward. Of course, they're going to be outraged and demand justice. We're Aes Sedai, you can't make us bend the knee, you're a woolhead. I remember there was another dream from Egwene at some point where you had Rand on one side of a wall, and then on the other side there was Elaine and Egwene and others. So I'm guessing that's kind of representing the new divide that's going to be between Rand and Aes Sedai going forward. And also, unfortunately, it seems Elaine is going to actually bond Rand at some point. Ugh, I'm really not looking forward to that. Like, there was a vision in this book from was it Egwene? I think it was from Egwene, where there was a dream where Aviendha, Min, and Elaine all had their hands resting on Rand's forehead. So I guess they're gonna all give him that triple bond action. Maybe there's Alanna still in the mix, that quadruple bond. I already said I'm not looking forward to it. I really am not. We also got the establishment of the Black Tower and the Ashman, the guardians to balance the servants, as Nicola put it. Seeing the numbers grow and the farm progress throughout the book was amazing. I really enjoyed that. I don't see this leading to anything except the Ashman, or at least some of them turning against Rand at some point, because the way things are going now, it feels to me like a decent chunk of them at least will be more loyal to Taim than Rand, and like the way they're being trained up as weapons makes me think that the more aggressive ones, like the one Taim had to stop from hitting Rand again, or was it from killing somebody, something like that. Anyways, the more aggressive ones, I think they'll probably just end up leaving or rebelling and siding with Taim or something like that. I think Rand's actual right-hand man will be Logain now that he's been healed, but at the same time I don't, because we know Logain is destined for power and glory, and I don't see how you're going to reach such a high status of power and glory being somebody's right-hand man, unless it's just like he's the Amyrlin and then Rand is above that. I think he might just be a powerful ally for Rand, because there was another vision from Egwene where she saw men and women that were chained being freed from chains and then putting on crowns. So I'm thinking maybe that was people who were stilled or gentled. Now that they are being healed, they're going to return to positions of power in the world. We also got to see the school Rand established in Barthanes' Manor. That was pretty cool, seeing all the inventions. Rand had a pretty interesting conversation with Herod Fell about the nature of the cycle of the ages. But I think I'll keep my thoughts on that for when I give my general thoughts on the state of the world in part 2 of the review. There was quite a few mentions of this Aes Sedai in Caemlyn that has been rumoured to be going around healing cats. If I'm not mistaken, that's Marlin, the Black Aja, who's part of Leandrin's group in Tanchico, or was part of that group. I'm not really sure what she was getting up to behind the scenes here, but I think she might have been communicating with Varian, because I still think Varian is a dark friend. I believe it even more so after this book. I think that's everything I really need to summarize about Rand's part in this book. There's the stuff with his harem as well, but I really don't care for that. I find it extremely boring, and it got really irritating how Min, Elaine and Aviendha keep having these conversations about how they're going to share Rand. Meanwhile, Rand doesn't even think any three of them are romantically interested in him. Like, they just don't take his consent into consideration. They don't take his feelings into consideration at all. They just assume the way they want it to be is how it's going to be. And I know this is just how the women in this world are, so there's not really much point in me complaining about it, because I complain about the women a lot already in my review for the Fires of Heaven. I think that's everything. Rand found out his mom is Tigraine finally. He's just basically in Caemlyn or Carrion for the whole book until he's captured by Elida's emissary and brought to Demise Wells. And just like what happened with Alana, I think that's deserved. He had it coming with how conceited he was starting to be. The world building in this book was great, as always, from Robert Jordan. I really enjoyed watching the hodgepodge of different cultures starting to develop in society as a result of people being displaced by war and other troubles caused by the events of the story. Like, you have people leaving their whole lives behind just because the Dragon Reborn has returned. And then you have stuff like the Carrianan trying to adopt some of Aiel culture with the whole Geishane system and setting up their duels and stuff. I thought that was pretty awesome. Like, I know this is an understatement here, but what Robert Jordan did, creating and building upon the world, is amazing. We also got to learn all about the Shara system of Shibote and Shiboan, and how they reign for 7 years at a time, and how they set up marriages so that they can manage the birth of channelers. I thought that was pretty cool. Looks like I was completely off about Shara being a powerhouse, but anyways, we also got to learn about Ebodar's culture and how they have their own dueling system and their marriage system with the wedding knives. Is that what it's called? Marriage knives, whatever those are. And the same goes for Saldea. We learned about how marriage works there. So the husband has to be approved by both parents, and the wife has to be adjudged to be a woman by the mother first as well. And yeah, it seems that the Saldean wives are pretty fierce. They go into battle with the husbands, but then behind the scenes they're pretty submissive. And it seems that the marriage of Perrin and Fael will not be a smooth one, because we got another vision in this of the Falcon and the Hawk, except this time it seemed the Falcon wanted to kill the Perrin at some point. So I guess Fael tries to kill Perrin over Berelain for some reason, which is confusing me more, because there was another vision where Berelain is said to fall in love with somebody clothed in white. So I just thought that Berelain and Galad was confirmed there. So I don't know how one point reaches the other. There was actually world building I didn't like, strangely enough. I liked the information we got, I just really didn't like how we got it. Before the battle at Demise Wells, we had Perrin and company on their way to save Rand, and for some reason Jordan decided that this was the time to take the time out and teach us how wise ones and maidens settle disputes of leadership. I don't know if I'm alone here, but that just felt really shoved into me. Everything was starting to speed up as we approached this big final battle, and it just felt really out of place to have that put in there, slowing things down again. Also, the amount of Aes Sedai and nobles introduced was ridiculous. I really try my hardest to keep track of everything, and I feel like I'm just guaranteed to miss stuff going forward just because of the sheer amount of names introduced in this. I think Matt was the next POV appearance, so moving on to him. We first met Matt in the camps in the plains of Maredo, where we see Randed's gathering this huge army of hundreds and thousands of soldiers to act as this so-called hammer in order to distract Samael. Not too sure what the plan is for after that is used, but we already know Rand does take Ilian at some point, because in the Eye of the World, once again, Min's viewings, we saw in Rand's aura the golden laurel crown, so and then in the Lord of Chaos, we see Pedron Niall's spymaster Balwer say that Matin Stepanios, however you pronounce that, the king of Ilian, is the one that currently holds the laurel crown. And then Matt's actual first POV is basically just used to show us how the Band of the Red Hand is operating, and we get to meet Oliver, who's this fugly kid that Matt saves from a couple hunters for the Horn. Pretty safe bet that Oliver is Gaedal Cain reincarnated, because at some point during the journey to Ebudar, Matt noted that he had taken against Brigitte for some reason. I liked the dynamic between Matt and Oliver, like how by the end of the book, Oliver has his own cheeky grin and is acting as a mischievous brat as well, and then Matt is like, oh, well, I have no idea where he got those habits from. I think that's it. Matt really doesn't really have much character development in this book. He's just carrying out his duties as Rand's general. Even though there wasn't much for him in the growth department, he is without a doubt my favourite character in the series so far after this book, because there's a point in this where he summarises Nynaeve and Elaine perfectly. He nails them both on the head. He says how Nynaeve is always taking what men do and say the wrong way and tugging her braid, and how Elaine always has this sense of entitlement and expecting people to do as she says because of how she looks at them. And as soon as he said this, he became my favourite character, not just because he analysed them perfectly, but because he knows exactly how the girls are, and he is still always there for them, always trying to get them out of a jam. What a guy. Even when he notices the Aes Sedai aren't treating Egwene like a proper Amerlin, he decides to help her out and prostrate himself and say hello mother and all that shit. The girls really just do not deserve Matt at all. I know if I was in his position, I would not be showing the same kindness. You already know how I feel about the women in the Wheel of Time. Honestly, I feel like if I was in Wheel of Time, I'd end up as a Forsaken or a Dreadlord. I know myself too well to say otherwise, not gonna lie. So Matt is sent to Saladar to retrieve Elaine, and if he has time, Egwene and Nynaeve as well, which ends up with him getting roped into going to Ebudar with Nynaeve and Elaine. And I think that's pretty much it for Matt. I really loved watching him clap back at the Aes Sedai while he was in Saladar, so I'm guessing him and Rand are like the leading masculinists in the world, I guess. And yeah, I think that's everything for Matt. I have a pretty far out theory here regarding Matt, and there's a couple pieces here, so I'm going to have to look away to remember everything. So the first piece, there was a dream in this book from the Wise Ones that Aviendha told Rand about, where he's on a boat with the other women that they could not make out the faces of, and there's a scale going one way and then back the other. In The Dragon Reborn, there was a dream vision from Egwene about Matt placing his left eye on a balance scale. Sorry to break up the flow of the theory there, but there was something else I remembered once I moved past this point in my review. So basically there was another vision in this book, I think it was this book, where Egwene saw Matt, but his face was really bloody, and he had his wide-brimmed hat pulled down so that she couldn't make out his face fully. So I think when his face is all bloody, that's from him taking out the eyeball. I don't know if that's relevant to my theory that I'm saying, but I'm just going to throw it in there because I think it links to the eyeball and the balance scale thing. And then Nicola in this book had a foreshadowing where she saw, what were the names? The lion sword, the dedicated spear, she who sees beyond, and he who is dead yet lives. All of those people on a boat. So I think that is the same vision the Wise Ones had, but with a bit more detail. Sorry. So you have Rand on that boat with his harem. And then another thing to take into consideration is that in the Fires of Heaven, I talked about how I don't think the expression, the Dark One's eyes, is just an expression. I think there might be a bit more meaning to it. So basically, I think all of this connects in a way. I think that scale mentioned in the first dream from the Wise Ones being tilted one way than the other, I think when it's tilted the other way, it's Matt placing his eye on the scale. And I basically think that this somehow connects to Matt having to give up half the light to save the world, like the Eilfin said in The Shadow Rising. I think that's everything. So basically, yeah, that eye going on the scale is the Dark One's eyes or something like that. So that's everything. I might be completely off there, but I think maybe some of it at least might be right. I'm guessing it was Team that tried to kill Matt with the gateway, sending those Dark Friend Aiel through. I don't think it would have been one of the Forsaken. Maybe they instructed him to do it, but I don't think they done the act themselves. There was a viewing from Min in this where she saw all the lights being swallowed by the shadow, and when Rand was with Perrin, they slowed down, or they were able to hold their own against the shadow or something like that. So I feel like that's the reason Taim or whoever wanted to kill Mat, because Mat and Perrin are both Ta'veren, so I am guessing that Mat would have the same effect on those lights, whatever they were. And this is a complete shot in the dark here, but I think this is the strain that the Eelfinn mentioned, because when Mat went to the Eelfinn at the very start of the Shadow Rising, two of the things that the Eelfinn said that were of particular interest to me that I had no explanation of, could not piece together, was that they said that the strain was too strong with Mat, and that the savor of him was too strong. Don't know what the fuck those two things meant, but I think maybe the strain could be related to stopping the lights, if that makes sense. I have no idea if what I'm even saying is sensible at all, but I think that could be an explanation. So before moving on to the next character, I want to talk about my favourite part of the book. I know I said earlier my favourite part was probably the Rand versus Aes Sedai stuff, but my actual favourite part of the book is something that happened in the background, the Seanchan invasion. I absolutely loved how this was handled. You had all these hints dropped in the background, like the reports of Aes Sedai on leashes being used with monsters to take over Tanchico that Pedron and Niall got from Barradin. I loved all of that. Then again from Tom, when he's telling Mat all these other rumours, one of them is that the Aes Sedai have taken over Tanchico. So I guess I was right last review when I predicted that the Seanchan have more of a presence on land than people think, and that Ronda Makara was actually sending that second letter off to the Seanchan in the west. And again, in this we had all those mentions of the sea folk ships that are docked up but not doing anything, and then finally when Mat is in Ebou Dar, he actually meets one of the Haleen. So from that Haleen that he met, we get confirmation that the Daughter of the Nine Moons is in fact Seanchan. I had a blast looking at stuff that I predicted come together in this book. This book felt like it was made especially for people like me that read this and try to pay as close attention to detail as possible, but I am positive that there was still a bunch of stuff that went over my head, like the woman who was looking at Theodrin and Nynaeve through the window on the second story in Saladar when they're eavesdropping on the Shiraim and the rest of them. I have no idea who that is. Next up is Samael, so I'm just going to talk about all the Forsaken here. I really enjoyed the Forsaken in this. I really liked seeing all the different dynamics between them and how they're all plotting against each other, and we get to see how they're all trying to be in a bliss, and that the Dark One has pretty much promised most of, if not all of them, that they're going to be in a bliss too. And seeing interactions like Samael meeting up with Grendal was really entertaining, and I just really enjoyed seeing how both of them thought of each other, because at the start, when they first meet, you think Grendal is just toying with Samael, but then by the end, Samael is toying with Grendal, which was just awesome. And I liked how it showed how competent Grendal was, because obviously as a Forsaken, she's a threat, but I'm not going to lie, I'll admit, I was not taking the one that chooses to be chilling with a bunch of half-naked, if even half-naked people, as seriously as the others. Then we get to learn a bit about Mesa Anna and Shemiraj as well. I thought both of them were really good too. We didn't really get much of Mesa Anna past the prologue. I think she was only mentioned afterwards. So we learned that she is a scholar, but she was denied a place at Kalam Daan, however you pronounce that. If you can't remember what that is, it's from the flashbacks in Rodian during the Shadow Rising. It's the place where Sharam was shot down after the Boar was opened up. So she was denied a place there, and that led to her teaching until she turned to the Shadow. And I think that's everything from her. Oh yeah, she's in the White Tower at the moment. I have no idea who that is, if she's posing as somebody else. Maybe Alviarin, but I doubt it. Egwene mentioned that she's been seeing these women in the tower in Tel Air and Riyadh, so maybe she's one of them, but I thought that that group of women was just the remnants of Leandrin's group that Moghedien gave orders to during the Shadow Rising. We learn about Shemiraz's backstory too, and how she used to be the best healer back in the day, but she enjoyed seeing the pain and causing it, and though she healed more than the healing itself, which led to her being confronted by the Aes Sedai, and that led to her going to the Shadow, and she was the first to go to Shai Ol Ghul. I like characters like that, honestly. When characters, they have a screw loose, but they're not crazy for the sake of crazy, it's a bit entertaining. So I enjoyed her parts of the book, and I thought it was cool as hell how she manipulated the parts of the brain to torture Cabriana and her warder. Another bit of pretty interesting information from Shemiraz's arc is that she was actually told by the Dark One to send Trollocs and Fades to the Stone of Tyr to fight the ones that were sent by Samael. I have no idea what's going on with the Dark One here. The game he's playing with the creator is going way over my head here. I think that they've just been playing this game since creation, and there isn't really a good guy or bad guy. You just have the side that's black and the side that's white. The Dark One, he uses Fades and Trollocs and the likes, but That's not him being evil necessarily, it's just the pieces of his side in that game. Once again, interrupting myself here with something I thought of once I moved past this part of the video. I really don't think Jordan would have done this. I think this is just too bizarre, really. If this, I don't know if I'll even be satisfied if this is a thing in the Wheel of Time, but this could actually just be legit a game, an actual game between the Dark One and the Creator. And because Herod fell, I said earlier I wasn't going to talk about this until part 2 of the review, but I'll just mention it now anyways. Herod fell had that conversation with Rand where they say, you know, you have age 1, age 2, age 3, but each time it gets back to age 1, a certain condition in age 3 has to be met. So I feel like this could legit just be the Dark One and the Creator playing an actual fucking game in whatever world they're from. An actual game, and every time you have age 1, it's just new game plus or whatever. Interrupting myself again, I'm interrupting the interruption this time. Something else mentioned in this book was this game Samael had that's outlawed during the Age of Legends, where you had like live pieces like killing each other, fighting against each other, and it was outlawed. And I'm just thinking, you know, what if the Wheel of Time is legit that on a huge scale? Maybe that's just a bit silly. Maybe that's just going too far, but I don't know. Finally, we have Demon Dread as well, who seems to be the man who has orchestrated everything that happened throughout this book, because at the very end of the book, literally the last paragraph of the epilogue, he shows back up at Shai Ul Ghul and he's talking about how good a job he thinks he done with the Dark One. And I don't think the Dark One was actually laughing here in agreement. I think he was laughing because all of the Forsaken thought the exact same thing. So because I believe Demon Dread accomplished everything he set out to in this book, there is now no doubt in my mind that Varian is a Dark Friend, and I think she might be one that gets orders from Demon Dread, but it could be from any of the Forsaken really if they are all thinking they've done a good job this book. I don't really have any solid proof for Varian being a Dark Friend from this book alone, but I said in the Shadow Rising review everything that I think points towards her being one, but in this book, literally wherever Varian went, she caused events that led to Rand eventually deciding not to work with or trust Aes Sedai anymore. Even if it was stuff just happening resulting from a mere suggestion from her, she was still the root cause. And the message from the Dark One was to let the Lord of Chaos rule, not just the Dragon Reborn, and I think Varian definitely helped out with that. I want to get the arc with Pedron, Niall and Morgase out of the way real quick before wrapping up this part of the review. I don't care about Morgase anymore at all, if I'm being honest. She spends all her time working out how she's going to get Andorra back from Rand. Meanwhile, she's just getting in deeper with Pedron Niall. And I just can't bring myself to be interested in this because the way I see it, there's no point in it. Rand wants to give the throne to Elaine because everybody thinks Morgase is dead. Obviously, from Morgase's point of view, it's understandable, but I just can't be invested in this arc. Linny, Gil, both still gems. We get more romance from Talonvor and Morgase, which, as you could probably have predicted, I did not care for. I loved Pedron Niall in this. I think it was last book where we learned that there's 4 main generals of high renown with Pedron Niall, Davram Bashir, Garrett Brain, and who was the last one? Agelmar, I think. Agelmar. So seeing how Niall showed off his skills as a general in this was fantastic. We get to see how good he is at subterfuge, which I always love, like how he set up Omerna as this fake spy master to cover for Balwer, and how he used Balwer to manipulate the Terran Lords into rebellion. I love that. I know there's people that find shit like this, the kind of political maneuvering, boring, but I live for that shit. I really enjoy seeing everything that goes on behind the scenes. It occurs to me that I haven't talked about Min and Aviendha as I probably should have, but guys, if I'm being honest, I don't give a single shit about either character. I found them both extremely uninteresting. I do have to admit though, I was wrong about Min last book. I completely forgot that she was keeping her hair longer and dressing differently to keep up the Elmendreda persona, so my bad on that one, but I still do dislike her for the rest of the reasons I gave. At this point, to me, Aviendha and Min only exist to be characters that love Rand. You have a little bit of spice with Aviendha because she's a tsundere, you have a little bit of spice with Min because she can have these viewings, and then Elaine is like just about more interesting, just about, because she has this complex of being the Queen of Andorra and all that shit. Gonna cut myself off here for part 1. Part 2 should be out same time next week, where I'll talk about Perrin. I'll probably talk more in depth about Dumais Wells, and I'll talk about Dum Dummer and Dummis, the 3 Stooges, the 3 clowns. I'll talk probably a bit about Swan as well, and I'll probably wrap it up with general thoughts on the state of the world and some thoughts about the series going forward. So that's all for now, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.